What if you could claim a piece of New York real estate for less than the cost of a Broadway ticket? Sounds unreal, right? Yet that's exactly what a new wave of blockchain startups promises. Fractional ownership, instant rent payouts, and zero red tape. But here's the twist. The same technology built to democratize property might push it even further out of reach for the people who need it most. Back in 2018, a sleek condo project called 13th East and West tried to tokenize Manhattan. The pitch was dazzling. Developers Propeller and Fluidity would chop one apartment building into thousands of digital shares. Buy a token, own a fraction, watch the value climb. Reporters called it Wall Street for condos. Then the market blinked. Regular buyers asked, "Tokens? Like video game coins?" Meanwhile, regulators squinted at the paperwork. Within months, financing stalled, the tokens froze, and the dream flatlined. The very first crash in blockchain real estate wasn't about price, it was about trust, and almost nobody noticed outside the crypto bubble. But that was just the prologue. Fast forward to now. A handful of platforms are rewriting the playbook. Lofty AI lets you scoop up a slice of a rental house for $50. Every night at midnight, an algorithm tallies rent, pushes stablecoins to your wallet, and drops a little cha-ching on your phone. One token, one vote. Investors decide if the roof gets fixed or the manager gets fired. Across the street, digitally speaking, Vesta Equity flips the model. Homeowners who spent decades paying off their mortgage can sell equity tokens instead of signing another loan. They pocket cash today, and investors gamble on future appreciation tomorrow. This year, newcomers are crowding in. Monoblock raised $40 million to break student housing into microshares. Reblock is turning entire REITs on-chain, so Wall Street can trade property the way gamers flip skins. Analysts say the tokenized pie could weigh in at $3 trillion by 2030, and Deloitte thinks mainstream status arrives by 2035. Suddenly, the condo coin flop looks like ancient history. Here's how the magic works. Package the property. A lawyer drops the deed into a brand new LLC. Mint the tokens. The LLC issues digital shares, each one stamped on a blockchain. Push play. Investors buy tokens, and the smart contract splits rent in real time. Trade in seconds. Want out? List the token on a secondary market and cash out faster than you can refinance a latte. On paper, it's frictionless. No banks, no notaries, no 3-inch stack of closing documents. Tokens travel at internet speed. Fees shrink to pennies. And because every vote happens on-chain, public immutable, platforms claim they've cured the slumlord problem. After all, thousands of micro-owners should keep each other honest, right? Except, honesty is only half the battle. In May 2025, SEC Commissioner Mark Uyeda stood at a crypto roundtable and said the quiet part out loud. If your token represents equity in real estate, it sure looks like a security. Translation: file the paperwork or face the music. That same month, federal lawyers dragged startup Unicoin into court for pushing a property-backed token that allegedly mispriced Caribbean land by $600 million. The message landed like a sledgehammer. Tokenized bricks are still bricks in the eyes of the law. Platforms reacted in two ways. Plan A, shelter under Reg D. Sell only to accredited investors, millionaires who can stomach risk, and hope regulators warm up later. Plan B, build for Reg A+. Spend big on disclosures, so everyday folks can buy tiny fractions legally someday. Meanwhile, legal blogs warn that every click, every rent payout, every emoji vote is potential evidence. One wrong turn, and your digital duplex could vanish in an enforcement notice. Still, the money keeps flowing. On Zoom calls with early adopters, a strange pattern pops up. Many high-yield properties sit in lower-income zip codes. Small investors adore the fat rent ratios, but critics say that chasing cheap houses on-chain speeds up a trend already squeezing renters offline. Lawmakers smell smoke. The American Neighborhoods Protection Act wants big landlords to bankroll first-time buyers. The End Hedge Fund Control of American Homes Act aims to slap extra taxes on mega portfolios. Operators swear they're not hedge funds, just digital marketplaces, but the optics blur fast when an algorithm votes to evict for an extra 2% ROI. Tenants feel another layer of distance. If my faucet leaks, who do I call? The DAO. And when ownership is spread across 5,000 wallets worldwide, accountability can evaporate into a digital shrug. Yet for many homeowners, fractional equity tokens look like salvation. No monthly interest, no bank rejection letters, and the ability to buy back shares when life gets easier. Technology never lands in one piece. It lands in trade-offs. Zoom out, and the movement is racing beyond the US. In India, the fractional market just blasted past $500 million. A brand new SEBI framework forces platforms to publish audited statements, cap leverage, and list properties on a public dashboard. Rules that Wall Street wishes it wrote first. Gen Z investors, raised on crypto wallets and split pay apps, treat tokenized property like another line in a portfolio. A lofty survey finds their top 3 demands: mobile-first UX, environmental data, and the bragging rights of owning a beach house for $100. Luxury brands are testing co-ownership of villas in Bali. In Dubai, land department clerks now pilot NFT deeds. If geography once limited real estate dreams, a browser tab is busy smashing that border. BlackRock's digital assets team is reportedly sketching a micro-REIT that would let retirement funds drip dollars into single properties without touching Coinbase. Dubai's pilot could set off a domino effect. As soon as one government recognizes NFT deeds in court, every notary in the world faces an existential crisis. Then there's the whisper that Apple's Vision Pro 2 might showcase own-the-building holograms in AR house tours. Sounds crazy, until you remember people once laughed at online banking. But none of these headlines answers the one question that has haunted real estate since feudal times. In conclusion, will tokenization finally turn the American dream into a checkout cart reality? Or will it auction that dream, brick by digital brick, to the highest global bidder? Because when every square foot becomes a tradable chip, the line between homeowner and shareholder blurs fast. Maybe that's freedom. Maybe it's the ultimate commodification of shelter. The blockchain doesn't care. It just records the deal. So, next time you pass a for sale sign, ask yourself, is the buyer a neighbor or a DAO with 1,000 faces you'll never meet? Either way, the block is changing. And this time, it's literally on-chain.
The national debt.
The national debt.
The national debt.
It's a ticking time bomb, and according to the IMF, it is ticking louder than ever.
The legislation that just passed the Senate will add more than $3.9 trillion to the national debt.
America is 36 trillion in the red. China, another 18 trillion underwater. Add every nation together and the IOU hits an almost mythical 300 trillion. Triple the value of everything humanity makes in a year. So, simple question. Who exactly is that money owed to? The answer isn't hiding in some billionaire's vault. It lives in a vast, humming web of promises that keeps the modern world moving, until, one day, it might not. For most of human history, wealth was less about coins and more about trust. A farmer lent grain in spring, got repaid after harvest. No contracts, no interest rates, simply a handshake across a dusty field. But once empires began dreaming bigger, castles, navies, entire continents, they needed more than neighborly trust. So, in 17th century England, King Charles II issued the first large-scale bonds, paper IOUs citizens could trade. Suddenly, warships floated on rivers of debt, not rivers of gold. The idea spread. By the time World War I detonated in 1914, sovereign bonds financed trench lines from Flanders to Gallipoli, and global debt vaulted into the billions for the first time. Yet it was 1944's Bretton Woods deal that truly rewired finance. The US dollar became the planet's reserve currency, tethered to gold at $35 an ounce. But economies grow. Gold doesn't. In 1971, President Nixon snapped that tether. Money became fiat, valuable only because governments say so. Overnight, a new reality settled in. If a nation needed cash, it could simply create it. But what began as an emergency measure soon became a lifestyle. When wartime rationing ended, politicians discovered an irresistible lever. Borrow today, grow tomorrow, win votes tonight. Roads, schools, moonshots, funded not by taxes, but by promises. By the 1980s, global debt mushroomed. It hasn't stopped since. Think of debt now as a conveyor belt. Governments issue bonds. Banks, pensions, and insurance giants buy them with customer deposits. Interest flows back. Those institutions reinvest in, guess what? More bonds. Money never rests, it just loops. In the United States, roughly 70% of federal debt is held by domestic investors. Your retirement fund, your bank's rainy day stash, maybe even the spare cash in your brokerage. Foreign lenders, China, Japan, Luxembourg, you name it, collect the rest. Paradoxically, that means Americans mostly owe themselves. But self-financing isn't a uniquely American trick. It's a global tango. Picture the world's balance sheet like a spiderweb stretching across continents. Japanese pensions buy Dutch bonds. Dutch insurers scoop up Brazilian bonds. Brazilian sovereign funds cycle back into US treasuries. Money threads back and forth, forming an almost closed loop. It's elegant until somebody rips a strand. In 2010, Greece lost credibility, interest rates spiked, and suddenly the conveyor belt jammed. 1 in 4 public workers lost jobs. GDP cratered 25%. Greece became the poster child for what happens when lenders hit the brakes. Yet most countries can't afford to stop. In China, debt funds about 19% of public spending. In the US, roughly 25%. Politicians promise prosperity, voters demand it, and the engine revs on. So how does a system repay yesterday's loan when tomorrow's already over budget? Simple. It borrows again. Rolling debt is like shifting credit card balances from one card to another, forever. For wealthy nations with sterling reputations, think Germany, Switzerland, lenders barely blink. Rates stay low. The merry-go-round spins. Developing nations live a harsher reality. Sri Lanka and Pakistan, for instance, rolled debts at ever higher costs until interest alone devoured their budgets. When lenders sensed danger, rates exploded, budgets imploded, and the IMF parachuted in with painful austerity deals. So what safety valve remains when investors revolt? Enter the printing press. Central banks possess a superpower. Create currency with a keystroke. During COVID-19's economic freeze, the US conjured $3.8 trillion in a single year. Lifesaver? Absolutely. But also gasoline on an inflation bonfire. Inflation isn't just rising prices, it's shrinking trust. Venezuela printed so fast in the late 2010s that a loaf of bread cost millions of bolivars. Paper lost meaning. People hawked gold flakes at roadside stalls just to buy lunch. Even mild inflation erodes purchasing power, and because many emerging markets borrow in US dollars, a falling local currency turns manageable debts into mountainous liabilities overnight. When money weakens and trust fades, investors reach for something that can't be printed. Gold. Scarce, tangible, centuries tested. As of mid-2025, it's up 28% year-to-date, while the US dollar index is down 9%. Silver just spiked to a 30-year high, and mining shares, tracked by the GDXJ ETF, are soaring. Even Wall Street's titans have flipped bullish. JP Morgan, $4,000 gold by 2026. Goldman Sachs and Bank of America echo the call. Why? Because when the debt carousel wobbles, investors abandon promises for proof. Gold isn't anyone's liability. It's heavy, inert, and famously unprintable. And companies sitting on large, underpriced gold reserves suddenly shine. Debt fuels growth, cushions crises, and finances dreams. Shut it off and economies stall. Let it roar unchecked and interest eventually eats the future. The equilibrium is precarious, and history shows that when trust in sovereign IOUs collapses, defaults follow. Russia in 1998.
Every US house devours 2,200 square kilometers of softwood and 15,000 board feet of framing lumber. Much of it rolls south from Canada. Those boards already pay a 14.5% duty that could leap to 34.5% this year. Add a White House pro branding lumber critical to national security.
Argentina in
just
2001.
joined a geopolitical firefight. Builders like Idaho's Steve Martinez saw lumber futures jump 23% in a quarter. CoreLogic warns tariffs on building materials could add $22,000 to the median new home. No small headache when U.S. prices hover near $460 a K. Domestic sawmills, many are mothballed, crews aging or gone.
Burdens similar to those
In a quarter,
carried by
CoreLogic warns tariffs on building materials could add $22,000 to the median new home. No small headache when U.S. prices hover near $460
Sri Lanka in
a K.
2022.
The Sri Lankan government finds itself in a tough spot.
Domestic
The
sawmills.
country has built up excessive debt and has run out of the money needed to provide its people with essential commodities.
The United States still enjoys the exorbitant privilege of issuing the world's favorite reserve currency, but its debt-to-GDP ratio hovers near 100%. Interest payments already eclipse its entire defense budget. Raise rates just a bit further, and the math grows uncomfortable. So can the carousel keep spinning? Perhaps, if belief endures. Because the modern economy isn't built on gold or oil or silicon, it's built on
Recession in
confidence.
slow
Break
motion.
that, and the gears
Chevy
grind to a
Trax
halt.
and Trailblazer,
Debt is ancient,
built in Korea,
ingenious, and
now
dangerous.
endangered.
It's how we built
Toyota
cathedrals and
RAV4
satellites,
and
defeated
Honda
depressions,
CR-V,
and vaccinated
icons of
billions,
suburban
but it also
driveways,
binds us to an
face
ever
thousands
faster
in
treadmill.
extra cost.
Every borrowed dollar
Even
is a bet
Detroit's
that
Big
tomorrow
Three
will be
can't
richer
escape.
than today.
No car today
Maybe
is
we'll
100%
invent and innovate
domestic.
our way to
Could
growth that
factories
dwarfs
migrate
today's
home?
liabilities.
Yes, if
Or
you've got
maybe
2 to
faith
3
will crack,
years and over
currencies
$1
will
billion
wobble,
to spare.
and people will flee
Until
back to
concrete
things they can
dries,
hold in their
automakers
hands.
juggle
The
a
truth
brutal
is,
ledger,
no one knows where the
gouge
tipping
buyers,
point lies.
kill
Not the
models, or
politicians,
both.
not the central
Slash enough
bankers,
entry-level
not even the
cars, and new
quants with
vehicle
terabytes of
affordability
models.
dies,
So the
pushing
real
millions
question
toward
isn't
used
how
lots where
big can the
prices
debt get,
spike in
it's
sympathy.
how long
And
can we
just when
keep
drivers
believing the
rethink
wheel
that
will never
second
stop.
car, they'll
I'm glad
discover
you
their
joined me
dream
on this
home
journey.
drifting
If you
further
found it
away.
illuminating,
Every
consider
US
hitting that
house
subscribe
develops
button, because the
2,200
story of money is
square
only
kilometers
getting
of
stranger
softwood
from here.
and 15,000
What powers our
board feet
world
of
isn't
framing
gold,
lumber.
oil, or
Much of it rolls
technology,
south from
it's
Canada.
belief.
Those boards
Until then,
already
stay
pay a
curious. This is Jump to
14.5%
Future,
duty
and I'll
that
see you
could
again
lead to
soon.
34.5%
At 1:20 a.m. on
this year.
January 8th,
Add a
2020,
White House
ballistic
branding
missiles
lumber
arced
critical
across
to
the
national
Iraqi sky.
security.
Global
And the
oil
studs in your
prices spiked
walls
in
just
real time, and 100 US troops braced for impact, certain the next few seconds might rewrite history. Hi, and welcome. Today, we're unpacking how the United States and Iran, two nations separated by 11 time zones, edged to the brink of a conflict that could have dwarfed anything since World War II. To see why that moment mattered, we'll
Domestic
rewind a
sawmills,
century through
many are
oil
mothballed,
fields,
crews
covert
aging
coups,
or
revolutions,
gone.
and
Restarting
one
them
tragically
demands years,
misidentified
millions, and skilled
aircraft.
hands. A
Stay with
combo
me.
scarce on
By the
either
end,
side of the
you'll
Atlantic.
understand why the
How did the
future of
nation
Middle
reach
East
an
peace still balances on decisions made generations ago. Picture the Persian desert in 1908, blistering heat, endless dunes, and hidden underneath, a sea of oil. British prospectors struck black gold and quickly realized Persia, modern-day Iran, sat on the fourth largest crude reservoir on Earth. Look at this number, 84%. That's the cut Britain kept when it struck oil under Persia in 1908, leaving the host country just 16%. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company powered British battleships and bankrolled an empire, while Iranian workers toiled in poverty. Resentment quietly fermented, but a global war would soon turn quiet anger into open crisis. When Nazi Germany lunged at the Soviet Union in 1941, Britain and the Soviets turned to neutral Iran and saw danger. World War II flips the map. Worried that Iran's aging Shah might tilt toward Nazi Germany, Britain and the Soviet Union invade a neutral nation, topple the monarch in 7 days, and install his 21-year-old son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Iran becomes an allied supply corridor. For many Iranians, the lesson is stark. Great powers can redraw your destiny overnight. Fast forward to 1951. Iran's elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalizes oil. Britain responds with an embargo, then phones Washington. 2 years later, CIA and MI6 operatives pay mobs, bribe generals, and overturn a democracy in 4 tense days. Roughly 300 Iranians die. The Shah returns as an authoritarian beholden to foreign sponsors. What happens when a nation never forgets that betrayal? Petrodollars pour in, and Tehran glitters with neon and nightclubs. Yet inside hidden prisons, the Shah's secret police torture dissidents. Clerics decry Western decadence. Workers march. Intellectuals plot. By January 1979, mass protests force the Shah into exile, and Ayatollah Khomeini touches down to thunderous cheers. Overnight, US ally turns sworn enemy. November 1979. When Washington allowed the exiled Shah to enter the United States for cancer treatment, Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran, holding 52 hostages. On day 444, the captives finally flew home, but diplomatic ties were severed, frozen in time like insects in amber. The psychological break would shape every negotiation for decades. A daring rescue mission crashes in a desert sandstorm. 8 American servicemen perish. Diplomatic relations freeze solid, immovable for the next 4 decades. Imagine the trust it takes to reopen an embassy after that. Just months after the hostages were released, Iraq's Saddam Hussein smelled opportunity. He invades, betting Iran is too weak to resist. Instead, trenches stretch 1,000 kilometers. Chemical shells hiss. Nearly 1 million lives are lost. In September 1980, Iraqi tanks roared across the border. What Saddam expected to be a 2-week land grab turned into an 8-year trench war, eerily reminiscent of World War I. Gas attacks, human wave charges, and 1 million casualties on both sides. The US, terrified of Iranian victory, secretly supplies Saddam. Tehran answers by nurturing proxy militias like Hezbollah. When outside powers feed a regional war, what blows back decades later? Late war skirmishes spilled into the Persian Gulf. In 1988, after an American frigate hit an Iranian mine, Washington sinks half of Iran's navy in Operation Praying Mantis. Weeks later, USS Vincennes mistakes Iran Air Flight 655 for a fighter jet and fires. 2 missiles, 290 civilians gone. Officially, it's a tragedy. To Iranians, it's proof the US is willing to kill innocents. Another wound, another reason Iranians saw the stars and stripes as a threat, not a partner. The 1990s brought an American economic chokehold, oil embargoes, banking blacklists, technology bans. Iran responded by hardening ties with Hezbollah, Hamas, and other regional proxies. Then came 9/11. 4 months later, President George W. Bush grouped Iran with Saddam's Iraq and nuclear-minded North Korea. His infamous axis of evil. 2 years on, US troops toppled Saddam in lightning fashion. From Tehran's view, that proved only nukes could deter American regime change, which brings us to centrifuges spinning deep under Iranian mountains. After a marathon negotiation, 2015's Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action froze Iran's weapons research under relentless inspections. Sanctions eased, trade trickled back, and Iranians glimpsed economic revival. Critics fumed, but for a moment mistrust felt manageable. Then Washington changed hands. In 2018, President Donald Trump walked away from the deal and reapplied maximum pressure sanctions. Iran, boxed in once more, hinted it would close the Strait of Hormuz, artery for 1/5 of the world's oil, and quietly restarted uranium enrichment. A fresh fuse was lit. Calm before the storm. History never rests for long. December 2019. A US contractor dies after a rocket strike blamed on Iranian proxies. American jets hit back, killing 24 militia fighters. Gunmen torched the US Embassy gate in Baghdad. And on 3 January 2020, an MQ-9 Reaper circles Baghdad airport. Inside one of the SUVs below rides Major General Qasem Soleimani, architect of Iran's foreign campaigns, revered almost like a demigod at home. The Reaper launches its Hellfire missiles. In seconds, the convoy becomes molten metal. Tehran erupts. Millions pack funeral processions. The regime vows severe revenge. Analysts on cable news whisper we tree. 5 nights later, Iran answers. Volleys of ballistic missiles slam 2 American manned bases in Iraq. They're aimed carefully, enough to pulverize buildings, not enough to guarantee US deaths. Miraculously, no one is killed. Both governments see a slim off-ramp and take it. Crisis averted, almost. At dawn in Tehran, twitchy air defense crews mistake a radar blip for an incoming cruise missile. They fire. Moments later, Ukraine International Flight 752 plummets in flames. 176 souls lost. Iran tries a cover-up, is caught, and nationwide protests ignite again, this time against their own leaders. The showdown fizzles, but every actor understands how close they came to catastrophe. So here we stand, 100 years of oil deals, clandestine coups, brutal wars, embargoes, and assassinations, each grievance stacked atop the last, like unstable dynamite. Both nations feel victimized, both see the other as aggressor. Peace is possible. The 2015 nuclear accord proved dialogue can pry open even sealed vaults of suspicion. Yet history warns how fragile that calm remains. A single tweet typed in anger, each could yank 2 proud countries back toward the abyss. The next time sparks fly, the world may not be so lucky. Because when superpowers and regional giants collide, consequences go far beyond deserts and straits. They ripple through stock markets, refugee camps, and ultimately, our own living rooms. The war that almost happened is the lesson we can't afford to forget. Because the story isn't finished, and the final chapter is still being written right now, in missile silos, cabinet rooms, and secret negotiations. we'll read about only after the dust clears. History shows the powder keg. The future depends on whether we light it. You've been watching this deep dive into the US-Iran rivalry. If you enjoyed unraveling the past to understand our precarious present, feel free to join me next time as we explore another story shaping our world's future. This is Jump to Future, and I'll see you again soon. Mars was never meant to be lonely. What if the red planet is just the surviving fragment of a war that shattered our solar system? And what if the same doom is quietly heading our way? Millions look up and see a dusty neighbor. A few see a cosmic crime scene still smoking in slow motion. Our textbooks tell a tidy tale. Dust swirls, clumps, and voila, planets appear. But look closer, and the numbers wobble. Collisions at 45,000 miles an hour don't build worlds, they pulverize them like porcelain under a hammer. Flat, graceful orbits shouldn't emerge from cosmic chaos, yet every planet pirouettes on the same invisible record. And then there are hot Jupiters hugging their stars, impossible under the accepted model. Something doesn't add up, and one man refused to ignore the equation. When the math lies, the universe is whispering a secret. Van Flandern chose to listen. Meet Dr. Tom Van Flandern, Yale PhD, US Naval Observatory ACE, the human calculator trusted to place planets to the millisecond. The deeper he stared into orbital math, the more the official story frayed like old sailcloth. He proposed a different birth cry: solar fission. Young stars, spinning too fast, fling blistering blobs of plasma from their equators. Those blobs cool into planets, stealing their parents' spin on the way out. Cosmic children born mid-whirl. It explains the neat planetary disk, the unmatched angular momentum, even those hot Jupiters that never wandered far from home. If true, every planet is a runaway fragment, siblings flung from a stellar centrifuge. Yet one puzzle remained, glinting like shrapnel: Mars. Mars is undersized, underdense, off balance. If planets come in matched pairs, Earth's twin is Venus, Jupiter's is Saturn. So where is Mars' partner? Van Flandern considered the unthinkable. Mars is not a planet at all. It is a moon of a world that no longer exists. He called that lost world Muldak, and you've seen its graveyard, the asteroid belt. Suddenly Mars's oddities, thin air, mismatched hemispheres, stunted magnetism, look less like quirks and more like trauma. 2 centuries earlier, mathematician Johann Bode noticed planets follow a tidy cadence like notes on a cosmic staff. His formula left an empty seat between Mars and Jupiter. Astronomers hunted, found only rubble, and shrugged. Debris that never formed. Van Flandern flipped the script. A planet did form, thrived, and then exploded. Most of its mass fled into deep space. The leftovers drift in silent memorial, exactly where the math said a world should be. The asteroid belt isn't a nursery, it's a tombstone. If Muldak died in an inferno, its moon would be hurled outward, scarred and homeless. Look at Mars again, half smooth north, half battered south. It wears the blast like a mask no atmosphere can hide. Richard Hoagland, former NASA advisor turned cosmic detective, mapped Mars's wounds in forensic detail. Valles Marineris, a canyon 19 times deeper than the Grand Canyon, gouged where twin oceans once collided. Olympus Mons, a volcano 3 Everests tall, perched on a tidal bulge exactly opposite another rise. Bulges like these form only when a moon locks to a massive parent. Gravity needs rock the way tides need Earth's oceans. Mars behaves like a moon because it was one until its parent vanished. But what turned Muldak into dust? Enter Dr. John Brandenburg. A plasma physicist fluent in nuclear signatures, Brandenburg examined Viking lander data and froze. Xenon 129 blanketed the Martian surface at concentrations seen only after nuclear detonations. Worse, the isotope pools around Cydonia, home of the so-called face on Mars, and galaxious chaos, as if 2 warheads bracketed the globe. Brandenburg's conclusion: someone nuked Mars, and they fired twice for good measure. To him, Mars isn't a dead planet, it's ground zero. Planet-sized crime scene, twin impact zones, radioactive fingerprints, civil war or outside hit. Skeptics cry cosmic rays, but the pattern is too concentrated, too surgical, and comets add another clue. When satellites explode, their fragments dance around the largest chunk. Van Flandern predicted shattered planets would leave comets with miniature moons. Hale-Bopp arrived in 1996, bright, majestic, and trailed by companions exactly as he forecast. Shoemaker-Levy 9 struck Jupiter in 21 linked pieces, a celestial necklace born from a broken bead. Tiny moons orbiting dirty snowballs weren't fantasy, they were fingerprints of planetary murder. Still think planets leisurely snowballed into being? Myth meets math in 1958 when comic book legend Jack Kirby sketched The Face on Mars. His giants built AI, lost control, forged a doomsday weapon, and shattered the planet between Mars and Jupiter, sparing only their moon. Kirby's confidence? Rocket scientists on Von Braun's team. Fiction? Or thinly veiled briefing delivered in panels and ink? Sometimes the safest place to hide truth is a comic rack. Patterns repeat because physics keeps the receipts. Venus spins backward, as if slapped. Uranus rolls on its side. Neptune strays too far. Pluto drifts in exile. Our solar family portrait is a crime scene lineup begging for re-examination. Zoom out. 2 planets died. The survivors bear scars. Maldac's debris wave torqued Venus into retrograde. Uranus toppled like a cosmic bowling pin. Neptune's orbit stretched. Pluto was captured and pressed into icy exile. Earth? We were lucky. This time. Cosmic roulette spun, and our marble landed on safe. But the wheel keeps turning, indifferent to life or legend. We're tenants in a dangerous neighborhood with no landlord to call. If Maldac's fate came from advanced weapons, intelligence once thrived here, close enough to watch our blue cradle form. If it was natural, it proves planets can detonate unprovoked. Either way, complacency is a luxury we can't afford. We're passengers on a bus with shattered windows, pretending the road ahead is smooth. We gaze at Mars and see the past. Mars may be staring back, warning us about the future. Its silent surface, a black box waiting to be read. Modern orbiters reveal dried deltas, salt flats, polygon-shaped lake beds. NASA papers now admit significant past oceans, vindicating Hoagland's ocean grind hypothesis line by line. But oceans require air pressure, and Mars lost its blanket in a geological blink. Atmospheric models show that a shockwave would let lighter gases flee first. The timing matches the xenon spike. Oceans flash frozen, life, if it existed, suddenly homeless, like fish flung onto a beach in mid-breath. Imagine standing on Maldac's moon the day its sky was stolen, horizon glowing violet, winds howling outward into space, every breath thinner than the last. Earth's own craters, Chicxulub, Vredefort, Popegai, cluster suspiciously near Time's asteroid fragments from beyond Mars rained inward. Geological cores record iridium layers, chemical fingerprints of cosmic shrapnel. Mass extinctions may be Maldac's last aftershocks echoing across epochs. We dig fossils and call them history. The universe calls them clues. History textbooks call it coincidence. Orbital mechanics calls it trajectory. In intelligence circles they joke, 3 points make a line, 5 make a policy. Here are 5. 1. A missing planet where math says 1 belongs. 2. Mars's 2-hemisphere scar and twin bulges. 3. Xenon 129 concentrated exactly where monuments sit. 4. Comets orbiting in necklace formations. 5. Outer planet spins and tilts behaving like bowling pins after a strike. Draw the line and it points back to one explosive epoch. In cosmic terms, practically yesterday. And if an epoch can begin, it can recur. The past is prologue. The fuse may still be burning. Telescopes now catch stars gulping their own planets, supernovae shredding companions, rogue worlds slingshotting into new suns. We are cataloging cosmic violence at unprecedented resolution, yet flinching at the idea it once happened here, in our celestial backyard. Denial is comforting. Doubt is relentless. Together, they whisper, patterns are power. Recognize a pattern early and you get a choice. Recognize it late and you get a consequence. Tomorrow's historians, if any, will judge whether we chose curiosity or convenience. So, what will Earth choose? Van Flanden's ashes orbited Earth once before re-entry scattered them across the Pacific, a fitting farewell for a man who studied celestial debris. Brandenburg still lectures, facing polite smiles and raised eyebrows. Hoagland's inbox overflows with amateur photos of Martian anomalies. Their message to us is simple. If truth survives ridicule, it can still guide us. Stay hungry for the why, stay humble about the how, and, most of all, keep looking up. The sky isn't a ceiling. It's a courtroom full of silent witnesses, and the verdict is still being written. I'm glad you joined me on this journey. If you found it illuminating, consider hitting that subscribe button. Remember, every click powers the next leap into tomorrow's mysteries. Until then, stay curious and never stop asking, what if? This is Jump to Future, and I'll see you again soon. Could a few lines of blockchain code quietly tilt the balance of power in global finance and leave Visa and MasterCard scrambling to catch up? Welcome to a story about money that never sleeps, corporations that hate paying fees, and a brand new market Treasury officials say could swell past $2 trillion before most of us even notice. Tonight we dive into stablecoins, the crypto tokens designed not to moon, but to stay boringly, stubbornly pegged to the US dollar. Why do giants like Walmart, Amazon, and JP Morgan suddenly care? Why did Circle's IPO explode sevenfold in a single month? And could new legislation called the Genius Act actually make sense of it all, or blow it up? Let's unpack the invasion. In early June, Wall Street watched history glitch in real time. Circle, issuer of the USDC stablecoin, went public, raising $1.1 billion and rocketing more than 700% in days. Almost on cue, Coinbase inked a deal with Stripe and Shopify to sprinkle USDC checkout buttons across the planet. JP Morgan whispered about a deposit token called JPMD. Payments titan Fiserv mapped a coin to pair with its 90 billion yearly transactions. And leaked memos hinted that Walmart and Amazon were sketching their own tokens in backrooms full of lawyers and latte foam. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent didn't mince words. Stablecoins could unlock a $2 trillion market. That single sentence hit harder than a Super Bowl ad, and every CEO took notes. But hold up, before we crown a new king of cash, what exactly are these coins that giants can't ignore? Imagine a digital poker chip that never changes value. One chip, $1, no matter how wild the table gets. That's a stablecoin. Instead of chasing roller coaster highs like Bitcoin or meme stock NFTs, a stablecoin hugs the greenback. It stays stable by holding matching reserves, cash in a vault or short-term US treasuries, equal to every token in circulation. Two names dominate, Circle's USDC and Tether's USDT, a combined $217 billion sloshing through blockchains. Yet their approach differs. Tether issues from El Salvador, targeting global users beyond Uncle Sam's reach. Circle does it under New York's regulatory microscope, pitching trust to American customers who'd rather not gamble on Caribbean banking laws. With that foundation laid, the real question becomes, why are household brands throwing their logos onto these digital poker chips? Start with speed. Traditional card payments may look instant, but behind the curtain, banks reconcile in slow motion, sometimes days. A stablecoin moves in seconds, Friday night or Christmas morning, because blockchains don't close. Then there's cost. In 2024, card issuers raked in a record $187 billion in swipe fees. If Walmart can nudge shoppers toward a Walmart coin and bypass the middlemen, that annual fee line starts to look optional. When those whispers hit business desks in June, Amazon might mint its own dollars. Visa, MasterCard, and Amex stock all dipped in the same afternoon. Put simply, whoever writes the token standard could pocket a slice of every future transaction. That's a bigger incentive than any crypto speculation. No surprise the incumbents are scrambling to adapt. That tells you everything about where the fear lives. But incumbents aren't just watching, some are pivoting. The moment rumors leaked of Walmart coin, Visa, MasterCard, and Amex stocks dipped. Rather than fight the current, Visa publicly embraced stablecoins, testing USDC for internal settlements and letting fintechs issue Visa cards directly against crypto balances. MasterCard followed, wiring its token network to work with Paxos-issued coins. MasterCard followed, partnering with Paxos to let multiple stablecoins ride its tokenized network. And JP Morgan? It unveiled JPMD, a deposit token pegged to commercial bank balances, promising 24/7 settlement for institutional whale clients bored with 4:30 p.m. wire cutoff drama. But outside the US, ordinary people are already using these tokens, often without knowing it. Look past Wall Street and you'll find migrants in Chicago zaps USDC to family in Manila, paying pennies instead of double-digit wire fees. Then there's the unbanked shopkeeper in Lagos, who keeps daily takings in USDT to dodge local currency swings. Some use cases are invisible, municipal water suppliers settling invoices on-chain, or game developers paying artists across borders instantly. Behind the scenes, utility pipes are quietly rearranging. Supply chain giants settle invoices overnight. Fintechs embed USDC into apps so the user never even notices. Ideally, the consumer never sees the blockchain. They just notice that money moves faster and cheaper. That seamless layer is the holy grail. But that friction-free promise wears thin once you remember three-letter acronyms like SVB and UST. March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank collapses and Circle admits $3.3 billion of its reserves are trapped there. USDC wobbles off its dollar peg, traders panic, and Twitter adds gasoline. 2 days later, the Fed backstops deposits. The peg snaps back, but the scar tissue remains. Flashback further to 2022. the algorithmic Terra USD stablecoin spirals to zero, vaporizing $40 billion and detonating hedge funds in its blast radius. Regulators suddenly see stablecoins as money market funds on steroids, except, as former SEC Director William Birdthistle warns, these could fall to zero, not a penny short. Add money laundering alarms from a 2021 Treasury report, and you get Washington's new mantra: regulate before the next runaway train. Enter the Bipartisan Genius Act, fresh out of the Senate. It demands audited reserves, bans yield to customers, and lets Treasury blacklist foreign issuers. Crypto lobbyists cheer the clarity. Consumer advocates frown. Wait, the issuers keep the interest and we get zero? Complicating matters, a Trump-affiliated stablecoin drew conflict of interest fire after UAE investors piled in. Supporters hail the law as overdue clarity. Critics say it papers over deeper incentive problems. The House is drafting its own version, and lobbyists on both sides smell a once-in-a-generation rewrite of financial plumbing. Still, passage seems likely. And that sets the stage for an even broader consequence, one that reaches the US national debt. America needs buyers for its treasuries, especially as China and Japan quietly sell. Stablecoin issuers, hungry for safe yield collateral, have crept into the top 10 list of treasury holders. Secretary Bessent frames it as a surprising win. Stablecoin demand is decoupled from crypto hype. Their hunger for treasuries could lower Uncle Sam's borrowing costs. In other words, tokens born to dodge bank fees might end up propping up the very system they aim to disrupt. That irony isn't lost on JP Morgan's analysts, or, frankly, on us. For now, you might still tap a plastic card or flash a QR code, never thinking about the machinery underneath. Yet every day, more of that machinery is rebuilt in code that settles instantly, never sleeps, and ignores borders. Stablecoins sit at the crossroads of tech ambition, corporate profit, and national policy. History shows that when money's plumbing changes, empires rise and fall. The question isn't whether stablecoins will shape tomorrow's payments, it's who will own the rails, and whose rules will govern every digital dollar that moves across them. So next time you hear a checkout beep, remember, beneath that sound, a silent race is unfolding, and its finish line is nothing less than the future of money itself. I'm glad you joined me on this journey. If you found it illuminating, consider hitting that subscribe button. Tomorrow we'll dissect another silent futuristic technology reshaping everyday life. Until then, stay curious and keep an eye on the money that never sleeps. This is Jump to Future, and I'll see you again soon. The illusion of AI reasoning. Are we scaling the wrong mountain?
We're just at the beginning of the reasoning AI era.
I think we'll get superintelligence, and I would guess that it will be a continuation of this trend that humanity has been on for 100+ years.
Picture a future where machines don't just autocomplete our emails, but craft strategies, draft laws, maybe even plot the trajectory of humanity itself. Venture capital is flooding in, hyperscale clouds are racing to expand, and every headline seems to scream the same prophecy: reasoning AI will unlock superintelligence. But what if that prophecy is built on a mirage? What if the reasoning revolution is less a paradigm shift and more a well-lit illusion, shimmering just long enough to keep the money flowing? It wouldn't be the first time Silicon Valley mistook a flashy demo for a scientific breakthrough. Hold that thought, because once we peel back the marketing, the story of modern AI starts to look a lot less inevitable and a lot more precarious. For years, critics dismissed language models as stochastic parrots, systems that remix text with no real understanding. Tech giants fired back with a new buzzword: reasoning. These models, they said, wouldn't just regurgitate, they would think, show their work, break down problems, plan multiple moves ahead. OpenAI boasted GPT-4o, Anthropic dropped Opus 4, Google countered with Gemini 2 Flash. Each launch trailer came with a louder promise. This time the model actually reasons. Investors cheered, GPUs sold out, and chipmaker stocks soared. Everyone from Wall Street analysts to late-night hosts agreed. Thinking machines were here, human-level logic was next. Some research labs even filmed chain-of-thought visualizations, glowing vectors flickering like neurons in a sci-fi movie. Proof, at least aesthetically, that reflection had arrived. Then Apple, of all companies, lobbed the first grenade. In a bluntly titled paper, The Illusion of Thinking, its researchers set out a series of logic tests. The humble towers of Hanoi, with disks stacked from big to small, became their crucible. Add disks, one by one, and watch what happens. Up to 5 disks? Models cruised. 7 disks? Sudden collapse. Zero accuracy across Anthropic, DeepSeek, and OpenAI's finest. What looked like robust reasoning turned out to be sophisticated pattern matching. As soon as a puzzle left the training comfort zone, performance flatlined. It was as if the models mistook the exam for a déjà vu quiz, and any genuine novelty short-circuited the illusion. Research on research soon confirmed the finding with river-crossing games, Sudoku variants, even simple algebra word problems. Apple wasn't alone. A Salesforce team coined a new phrase for this brittleness: jagged intelligence, a sawtooth graph of brilliance one moment, faceplant the next. Their public benchmark, Simple, featured high school-level riddles. Models aced some, bombed others, and offered no warning which way a real-world task might fall. If your enterprise is betting its supply chain, its compliance workflows, or its healthcare triage on these models, jaggedness isn't just inconvenient, it's existential. Imagine a self-driving car that's flawless with lane keeping, but forgets how to brake when the sun angle changes. Anthropic doubled down on self-critique with reasoning models don't always say what they think. In plain English, even when the model can solve a puzzle internally, it often spits out the wrong answer because the chain of thought it generates is noisy, half-formed, or misranked.
Well, on benchmarks, we can make it do really well on specific tasks. And that's valuable. Like, we have a lot of agents who want to do specific tasks. I think the thing that's not well understood, and that some of those papers you allude to show, is that it doesn't generalize. So yeah, while it might be really good at this task, it's awful at very common sense things that, you and I would do in our sleep. And that's, I think, a fundamental limitation of the reasoning models right now.
The very feature advertised as proof of thinking, showing its work, turns out to obscure whether any thinking occurred at all. AI's modern faith is the scaling law. Double parameters, harvest more data, watch error rates drop. It worked for vision, translation, dialogue, until late 2024. Progress in benchmark performance began to plateau, and frantic labs looked to reasoning as the escape hatch. If predictive text had hit diminishing returns, maybe planning and reflection would deliver the next S-curve. But scaling comes at a cost measured in terawatt-hours and eye-watering cloud invoices. One MIT study pegged training a frontier model at the carbon footprint of 5 round-trip flights to the moon. You can only burn that kind of fuel for so long before shareholders or regulators start to ask uncomfortable questions. Apple's paper suggests the escape hatch might be welded shut. Worse, the more a task demands genuine abstraction, the faster current models stall. The industry could be discovering a law of its own. Memorization scales, reasoning doesn't. None of this slowed the hardware frenzy. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang told analysts that agentic reasoning will require a 100-fold increase in computation over standard LLMs.
The amount of computation necessary to do that reasoning process is 100 times more than what we used to do.
Music to the ears of every data center builder on Earth. Boards nodded and signed off on billion-dollar GPU clusters. But those clusters assume the scaling creed holds. If reasoning plateaus, all that silicon might end up mining shallow pattern space for pennies on the dollar. Jamie Dimon warns that AI is table stakes even if the benefit isn't immediately clear.
We now spend about $2 billion on AI. We have something like 600 actual in-use cases. That number will probably double next year and maybe triple.
Translation: every Fortune 500 firm now feels compelled to buy reasoning models just to avoid looking obsolete. Yet field results remain hazy. McKinsey's latest Tech Pulse survey found that fewer than 15% of generative AI pilots reach full production, and a third get scrapped altogether. Insurance adjusters still audit every AI claim by hand. Retail chatbots freeze when asked to explain a price change. Legal teams keep the human in the loop because hallucinations still slip through. The ROI case rests on a promise that smarter reasoning is imminent. What if imminent means 5 years, or never? Critics argue Apple's doom and gloom is self-serving. Cupertino lagged, so Cupertino moved the goalposts. Anthropic fired back with the illusion of thinking, claiming Apple cherry-picked puzzles and ignored newer fine-tuning tricks. But the number of labs ringing alarm bells is growing, and the debate has morphed into a high-stakes spin war. Whoever defines intelligence may dictate who gets to declare AGI, unlock partnerships, or trigger profit-sharing clauses worth billions. Once superintelligence sounded lurking, just 1 or 2 breakthroughs over the horizon. Now skeptics inside the field whisper a different timeline: decades. A major business school meta-analysis labeled today's systems engines of linguistic association, brilliant at mimicry, terrible at novel logic. The frontier hasn't moved, our rulers just got finer. We can make a model unbeatable at towers of Hanoi, but the real world is an infinite set of towers the model has never seen. Train on all of them? Impossible. So we're back to the same ancient question. Can intelligence emerge from scaling alone, or does it require a different paradigm altogether? Reasoning was pitched as AI's next giant leap. Instead, it is exposing a deeper truth. Current architectures excel at recognizing, not understanding. We may be building taller ladders when what we need is a new kind of wings. If you're an investor, that means recalculating risk. If you're an engineer, that means daring to rethink foundations. If you're a policymaker, that means drafting guardrails before the hype train outruns reality. And if you're an everyday user, it means staying skeptical of marketing that sells magic where only math exists. So here's the part they don't put in the launch keynotes. AI is still, fundamentally, an experiment. The question isn't how high we can scale, but how far we can generalize. Until that day comes, reasoning may remain the most expensive optical illusion in tech history. I'm glad you joined me on this journey. If you found it illuminating, consider hitting that subscribe button. Let's keep probing the frontier together. Until then, stay curious. This is Jump to Future, and I'll see you again soon. Elon Musk stared straight into the camera, flashed that half-smirk that makes Wall Street nervous, and dropped a line nobody saw coming. If Trump's one big beautiful bill becomes law, the America Party launches tomorrow.
Everyone!
Within minutes, the hashtag America Party shot to the top of Musk-owned X, a platform now boasting roughly 610 million monthly users. More eyeballs than the 3 largest US cable news networks combined. But beneath the flash lies a dangerous idea. A tech billionaire is about to aim his rockets at the two-party duopoly that has ruled America for 160 years. Stick around, because if Musk pushes the red button, the blast radius could reach every ballot box in the nation.
Elon threatened to launch a third political party named the America Party.
If Trump's reconciliation bill passes, Elon Musk believes the America Party is going to get formed the next day in opposition.
Elon Musk polling his social media followers, asking if it's time to create a new political party
that actually represents the 80% in the middle.
The feud began when Trump's $4.5 trillion one big, beautiful bill bulldozed through Congress, expanding deficits and gutting green energy credits. Musk blasted the bill as fiscal malpractice, then promised political revenge. Instantly, pundits panicked. If any single person can fracture Washington's red versus blue binary, it's the billionaire who already disrupted cars, rockets, satellites, and public discourse itself.
If there was anyone who could do it, it would be someone like Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is one of the world's richest men and famous around the world.
Why America's political mainframe is nearly impossible to jailbreak. Since Abraham Lincoln's 1860 upset, no new party has conquered the White House.
The most successful third-party candidate since Teddy Roosevelt 1912 to this day, Bush and Clinton supporters debate who Perot hurt more in 1992.
The dollar's gone through the floor. Now, whose fault is that? Not the Democrats, not the Republicans. Somewhere out there's an extraterrestrial that's doing this to us, I guess. I make those charts you see on television, naturally.
It's undemocratic to exclude you from the debate.
What really are you hoping to accomplish here? Well, what I'm really hoping to accomplish is to open up the debate so we actually have a fair and inclusive debate at a time when the American people have rejected the 2 establishment candidates at record levels.
Open the debate! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Open the debate!
Gazillion political parties can get on the ballot, and most of these efforts flame out spectacularly without leaving any real mark on the system.
Candidates have no chance.
4 brutal barriers wipe out almost every challenger. Ballot access. 50 states, 50 rule books, mountains of signatures. California alone can demand hundreds of thousands of verified names. Texas hovers around the 6-figure mark. Money. Congressional candidates alone raised $3.8 billion in the current cycle. Party committees added another $2.7 billion. That tsunami makes third-party war chests look like tip jars. Media gatekeeping. Debates are run by a commission created by Democrats and Republicans. No outsider has shared the presidential stage since Ross Perot in 1992. Winner takes all math. Carry 49% of Texas? You still get 0 electoral votes. And here's the jaw-dropper. Those rules were literally written by the very parties newcomers must defeat. Gallup's latest governance survey shows 63% of Americans now agree the 2 parties do such a poor job that a third is needed, the highest reading in the poll's 20-year history. Voters aren't looking for a mascot, they're looking for an escape hatch. What happens when an overpowered hacker tries to jailbreak an ancient mainframe? That's Musk versus the two-party firewall, and the next exploit is already loading. Traditional insurgents beg CNN for 30 seconds. Musk commands X, where one late-night meme can nuke a stock price or rewrite tomorrow's headline. With 610 million plus monthly users, a Musk debate streamed on X would likely outrate every cable outlet combined, and he doesn't need the debate commission's permission. He literally owns the algorithm that decides what you'll scroll past at breakfast. Media blockage? Deleted. But money still fuels campaigns, so how does Musk refill the rocket stage? America's twin parties soak up billions because corporations treat donations like insurance policies. Musk sits on a personal fortune north of $350 billion. He could bankroll 50 state field offices, underwrite lawsuit defenses, and still have change left for Mars. His net worth can swing by billions overnight, an entire 4-year budget for most campaigns. In a system where dollars buy both airtime and attention, his cash buys something rarer, independence. And that scares every lobbyist in a 10-block radius of Capitol Hill. Simply put, Musk is the first candidate in modern memory who could tell deep-pocketed donors, "Thanks, but I've got this covered." Texas alone asked Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for more than 100,000 signatures. He delivered double and still faces lawsuits over comma placements. Elon's edge? He built a reusable rocket factory in a swamp faster than most candidates file FEC paperwork. Imagine SpaceX-style rapid iteration applied to signature drives. Satellite-mapped volunteer routes, geofenced canvassing, blockchain-logged petitions. Ballot access becomes an engineering sprint, not a political slog. And because every state deadline is a ticking clock, that speed advantage could be decisive. Spoiler route. Musk siphons, moderates, forces a 270-vote deadlock, and becomes the House-elected power broker. Kingmaker route. He trades ballot strength for policy concessions, drug costs, greenlight fusion, cap lobbying. Full send route. Target Rust Belt independents, climate realist Gen Z, and libertarian-leaning techies. In a three-way split, 35% in the right zip codes can bag the Electoral College. Play the numbers wrong, and you spoil. Play them right, and you become kingmaker. For decades, voters pulled the lever against whoever they hated more. 53% of Trump supporters in 2016 admitted that. Musk flips the script by selling destiny. Mars colonies, AI co-pilots, carbon-negative cities. Agree or not, it's vision, something you can't buy with attack ads. Imagine updating laws like you push software patches. No filibuster, just version 2.0 of democracy planted firmly in the cloud. Now picture that thought sticking in the voter's brain right before they step into the booth. Campaign finance. Kill switch. Refuse PAC dollars. Live stream donations in real time for radical transparency. Open source bills. Crowd edit legislation on Git, showing lobby changes in red lines so every voter can see who wrote what. VR town halls, Nebraska farmers grill candidates virtually on the House floor while Silicon Valley coders watch in the same room. No plane tickets required. Blockchain ballots. Pilot tamper evident voting in small counties and scale nationally once audits pass. Call it the Perot effect on steroids, except this time the internet votes in real time. Conventional parties once laughed at reusable rockets too, until Falcon 9 landed softly on a bobbing drone ship at sea. Maybe the America Party is just Musk's bargaining chip to force space, AI, or crypto reforms. Maybe it's ego, etching his name beside Lincoln's. Or maybe, like every other moonshot, it's a genuine belief. If the system's broken, rebuild it from scratch. Because once you've engineered a car that drives itself, a Senate that funds itself looks fixable. Washington has survived civil wars, depressions, and hanging chads, but it has never faced a figure who commands both the world's loudest social network and the world's deepest pockets. If Musk pushes the red button, election night may look less like a vote count and more like a software update. The screen goes dark, a progress bar loads, and when it flickers back, the operating system of American politics has rebooted, so buckle up. The countdown has already started, and when Musk hits launch, history doesn't just watch, it uploads. I'm glad you joined me on this journey. If you found it illuminating, consider hitting that subscribe button, because the story of money is only getting stranger from here. What powers our world isn't gold, oil, or technology, it's belief. Until then, stay curious. This is Jump to Future, and I'll see you again soon.